Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You may take your seats. Thank you. I see this evening we have a distinctly left-sided setup in the auditorium. So let me extend a very warm welcome to each one of you for finding time in your busy diaries to come and join us on this very special occasion. Let me begin by recognizing Professor Deborah Meyer, the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Sciences. Professor Marijke Coetzee, we look forward to your inaugural lecture this evening. Professor Martin Olivier was our respondent this evening. We also look forward to his remarks towards the end of the proceedings. Senior leaders of the university, members of Senate and other academics present, distinguished guests, but in particular let me extend a very warm welcome to family and friends and colleagues of Professor Coetzee, notably her husband, Mr. Coetzee, warm welcome, and is it Jean and Marnus, a warm welcome to you as well. So it's a great honor and a very special privilege for me to welcome you all to the professorial inaugural lecture of Professor Marijke Coetzee. As I do so, I express a warm welcome once more to her loved ones, to her special guests, and to her colleagues who have been waiting for 3 years for this occasion. This is indeed a proud, a joyful, and a landmark moment for all of you, for Professor Coetzee, and of course for all of us here at UJ, higher education in South Africa and beyond our borders. I always make this point on this occasion because the title of professor is a very special title. It's a very special role. And whether you are in Greece, or in Brazil, or in India, or in Senegal, a professor is a professor. And so when you carry the honor of being a professor, you represent the entire community of professors across the international community. And so I really, on this occasion, try and emphasize the universal nature of the role, of the position of professor. Of course, it's also important to highlight that the professor is the most senior scholar in the academic community. And so in as much as it is a universal title, the title, the role, the office of professor is the office of the most senior academic in the academic community, whether here at the University of Johannesburg, in South Africa, on the continent, or beyond our continent. Now, as I often remark on these occasions, inaugurations of this kind, and I emphasize of this kind, many a times pompous and decadent, I hope not on this occasion, but hopefully mostly dignified, well-meaning, and unsullied, we are told in this form, date back to ancient Greece. Because, I say this because of course human society goes back further than even ancient Greece. And so this is then the opportunity for the formal investiture of a person into high office. And so it marks the formal assumption of office or position of authority, although we will use this with great care in your instance, Marijke. And so today is that day that marks the rites of passage and the entry of Professor Coetzee into the distinguished community of university's most senior scholars. As I've already observed and wish to re-emphasize, it is an office and a position of authority and leadership which we shall not assume lightly, but we shall do so with considerable and ongoing thought, reflection, deliberation, and importantly, I guess, presence of mind. And so the professorial inauguration is as important to the incumbent and their loved ones and colleagues as it is to the university and the community of universities across the world. I say this since the inaugural lecture is as much a reflection on the state and the intent of the contemporary university and how it measures up to Professor Coetzee's inaugural lecture on "Not all trust is created equal." On these auspicious occasions, I often remark on and remind us of Vartan Gregorian's hopefulness and controversy when he argues that universities are not only repositories of past human endeavor, they are instruments of civilization. I'm sure you can see the hint of controversy. He continues that they provide tools for learning, for understanding, and for progress, that they are well springs of action, sources of self-renewal, of intellectual growth and of hope. And he concludes that they are mediums of progress, of autonomy, of empowerment, of independence, and of self-determination. Yet at the same time, I offer us Wernick's argument that the university has a contradictory relationship with its surrounding society. On the one side, the autonomy in terms of its axial values of truth, of wisdom, of science, and so forth. And it continues, on the other side, those who control the means of the material production control the means of mental production. And even more controversially, the dominant ideas are the ideas of those who dominate. I'm also reminded that very few books are available in decent bookstores on what it is to be a professor. Dare I ask a question? In which decent bookstore can we find a book on what it is to be a parliamentarian? And perhaps less what it is to be a councillor in local government. And maybe less controversially, what it is to be a judge. But I suggest that there are few books available on what it is to be a professor, and in particular what the freedoms and duties of this most senior scholar of the university is. In his book, Intellectual Leadership in Higher Education, Renewing the Role of the University Professor, Bruce McFarlane, visiting professor here at the University of Johannesburg and professor at Hong Kong University, seeks to correct this oversight and argues convincingly that given the corporatization of the research agenda, professors must reclaim professorial leadership, and that they thus occupy a very special role. I don't want to say like parliamentarians and councillors. Specifically, McFarlane argues that two freedoms, that of critic and of advocate, are essential for professors to execute their four duties that he argues are those of mentor, of guardian of standards, of enabler of networking and mobilizer of resources for others, and fourthly that of ambassador for the institution or for the discipline. And so this evening we will have only one small insight into how Professor Coetzee responds to this call for the return of professorial leadership. Allow me now to invite our Executive Dean of Science, Professor Deborah Meyer, to introduce Professor Coetzee. I thank you. Ngiyalibonga. Bye, dankie.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.